Welcome back to another episode of the Dutchy and Swoop Show, a mid-season episode. We just come off an incredible win against Melbourne, a nice 1-point win. Dutchy's just come back from Bali, so if he looks a little bit more tan, that's why.
How am I looking? Do I look a bit tan?
Yeah,
All right, we've got the new lighting as well, and I got the tan. I've perfected the timing.
Back to your modelling days, mate. Now with that Bali
not quite
tan.
there. Might need a bit of Botox.
Just quickly before we get into it, how was Bali?
Bali was great. I mean, I went for a run this morning. I think it was like 4 or 5 degrees when I went for a run. But it was just 30 degrees every day, perfect blue skies, and spent a bit of time in Uluwatu. If you haven't been to Uluwatu, don't go anywhere in Bali. You don't need to go anywhere else. Ubud's beautiful as well, but Uluwatu is unbelievable.
Interesting.
Yeah. Just cliff face. You feel like you're in Santorini in some of these restaurants. Wow. Like it's really beautiful.
I'll have to write. Where did I go? I went Canggu. Classic
Canggu.
Canggu.
If you want to party, that's
I had to party when I was there a couple of years ago. Look, let's get straight into this review of the Melbourne game, and then we'll talk about the past season so far. What you were on the plane when it was happening, right?
Yeah, I just didn't quite time the flights too well. I booked a flight exactly half time. The flight left. In the end, the flight left at 3/4 time, which is even worse because they kicked that last goal just to get within a goal or 7 points or whatever it was, Melbourne. And I think, geez, there's a game on here. And so I missed the whole last quarter, unfortunately, but... got back in, watched it on the Uber on the way back, watched the replay, obviously saw the scores. Yeah. They won by 1 point. I'm thinking, geez, this must have been a thriller. I've missed a beauty here. But what a game. Going back and watching it, it was a great game, and they did make our life a little bit harder in terms of closing the game down. They threw the world at us. Yep. There's no question about that. And, geez, haven't they come out whinging again? The Melbourne fraternity, supporters, players, blaming each other after the game. It's just,
blaming the umpires.
Things just don't change. Even my good friend Russell Robertson, he posted up one of those memes where the Collingwood players are singing with the umpires. And he's posted it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I just go, mate, let it go, buddy. Are you serious? Like, where? Oh, jeez. But it takes me back to the 2023 season when all that stuff happened with Brayshaw and Maynard in that final. When they lost that game by, what was it, a goal or less than a goal?
Yeah. Well, less than a goal.
They could have quite easily have won that. They spent the whole week whinging about Maynard and Collingwood, and Maynard should be out for, should be thrown in jail and throw away the key. They weren't even focused on the next week.
And then look what happened.
They lost the next. They lost the next game. So you just got to focus on what's next in this game and not worry about the. Like, do you ever hear Fly talk about umpires? You never hear
exactly.
it. You just got to be 4 or 5 goals better than the opposition, just in case the umpiring's not great.
Yeah. And
there is a case and an argument for Dacos, probably 5 free kicks short of where he should have been as well.
100%.
So we can whinge about that, but we don't. We just get on with it because. We're a club that doesn't blame others. We just, we love our teammates at Collingwood. We back each other in. We would never push another teammate or get in our teammate's face when the game is done or a teammate makes mistakes. And you did put a post up, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So I put a post up, a side-by-side of when Jack Crisp missed that goal against Geelong, and every single Collingwood player got around him. And, it could have been easily like... They just sort of disregarded him, and then I put it up compared to May and Gawn. But it also reminded me of this one time. I don't know if you remember, but it was a couple of years ago, and Maynard. I don't know if it was
Anzac
was
Day.
it when
Maynard
kicked it out and kicked it straight to and it cost a goal, and then everyone went over and
that was Anzac Day,
and
they were talking about it pre-game.
Yes,
Fly was saying you're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The first mistakes, mate. If the mistakes made, I want everyone to get around that player and just give him a bit of love and support. And Maynard ironically made the first mistake in that big game. Yeah. And then all the Essendon players were coming to get around, to get up him.
Yeah.
And before any of the Essendon players could get to him, to sledge or get up him, there was 5 players around him hugging him.
Yeah.
And that is the modern game. You've got to support. That is strong culture right there. And an unbreakable love for your teammates, regardless of what sort of mistakes they make. I mean, at the end of the day, Max Gawn has given everything to that footy club for a long period of time. He's been the best ruckman nearly of all time. Yep. He's held that club on his shoulders for so long. And for another player who's arguably, like, you could say, like, you know, he's done a few wrong things on and off the field.
Yes, yeah.
And he's got a bit of a reputation for smashing his players on field and he's demonstrative and all the rest of it, which I don't like. I mean, you know, you got young players in that side. I'd be intimidated playing with someone like May if I was an 18, 19, 20-year-old.
Yeah.
But you don't have a crack at Gawn. Like, well, that's
not in the public eye either. Like, in the rooms after the game, go up to him.
Yeah.
But not like, you know that there's 1,000 cameras. You know you're going to get caught by.
But discuss it and how you can make it better for next time. Or talk your way through what happened. How can we do this better? Could we have done more for you? You don't get up in his face and grill and say, hey, you know, I don't know what he said. It's hard to know. It's hard to actually comment too much when you don't know what he said. But at that stage, you just stay. If you've got nothing good to say, just stay away from him. Completely.
Yeah, well, that's what Mum always says. You've got nothing good to say, nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, that from 2023, that's the whole blame game. Even, you know, Goodwin tends to blame others, you know, for obviously losses and things like that. That whole press conference.
Well, the presser with Ed Langdon as well.
Yeah, with Langdon. So, you know, like it starts from the top, doesn't it? Really, the coach and how he, you know, he presents himself and what he says, and you know, obviously the language that he uses, and it filters down to your leaders and then to your players. Yeah. And that's why Collingwood are in such a good place, because Fly plays a straight bat. He's got a lot of love for his playing group. And it filters right down to your last player.
And what I love about that as well, talking about filtering, it filters down to the fans as well.
Correct.
I've changed so many of my personal philosophies, and I feel like I'm a better person since Fly came over and was talking about, you know, all the way that he sort of talks and how he sort of believes and his mindset. But then if your coach and your president and your players are all blaming each other, of course your fans are going to get up and about. And you know, okay, umpires, whatever. Melbourne, and I don't know if you probably have the stats there, they were on top. On paper, they should have beaten us by 4 or 5 goals. Yeah, well, they were incredible.
There is some telling stats there. You know, we were -9 in inside 50s, but that's nothing new to us. Is it? -26 in hit-outs. Obviously, Max Gawn factor.
Incredible, yeah.
Centre bounces, we got absolutely smashed. We're -9, not -10 in clearance overall, obviously because of the centre bounce factor. -30 in contested possession. So it was really the insiders versus the outsiders on the weekend, where we won outside uncontested possession by 67, although a lot of those were uncontested marks. Yep. So they didn't defend us too well, though they gave us that short kick and really defended their back 50 really hard. So there's some lopsided sort of stats in that, but you can't win games of footy, generally speaking, if you're giving the opposition, like we had 107 uncontested marks for the game. You're getting over 100. I always say to my guys at local level, if we can hit 90, we don't lose most weeks. Uncontested marks. We've hit 107 last week. And they only had 73 marks, all marks for the game. So, really interesting. They outdid us in the contested marking area as well. Obviously, Gawn and Cameron had a really good tussle.
That was a good battle. But like even down back, like we just talked about May, but May, Lever, Gawn, we got into the habit, and this probably is a good point to talk about. We got into the habit of just kicking it up and long, and I think that had something to do with McStay being back, so another tall timber. We really weren't lowering our eyes like we usually would. Yeah. You see Jamie Elliott has like 7 possessions, kicks a goal. Yep. But with McStay back, I know we kicked 2, but we got into that habit of like what we did against Geelong. Like it seems to be in all our losses. What we did against Geelong, what we did against the Giants, where we just kept kicking it to their intercept defenders. Yeah, like high and long.
Yeah, I think that pressure, there was a bit of heat in the game. And it does force you to dump kick or kick long down the line a little bit more than you'd like to. As the game opens up, generally speaking, you tend to find the holes. But they did defend us well at times, and they did put pressure on the ball, so it made it hard for us, no question about that. But Still, at the end of the day, we're a little bit more efficient. I think we're 10% more efficient in disposal.
Yeah, yep.
You know, and that's the difference at the moment. That's what's, you know, the difference between us and the opposition most weeks. Because some of these weeks, as you know, we're losing clearance every week, sometimes losing inside 50. I think probably nearly 40% of our games we've lost inside 50s, but still won those games
as well, which is just
wild. So it's really interesting. And I don't know what you thought. There's a lot of talk around about the Gawn and Cameron, who was better on the day. Then Dwayne Russell was talking about on radio. I had a bit of a spat with one of the Collingwood supporters. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, I heard a little bit of that.
It was an interesting, tussle. But, when you look at Darcy Cameron, he's probably been a bit more efficient, and he's taken 9 marks around the ground.
That's the thing.
And he had an impact around the ground, probably a touch better than Gawn, whereas Gawn was probably a little bit better in the ruck.
Yep.
But his hits to advantage, I'm not sure, in centre bounces, yes, they were getting advantage, and I think Collingwood should reshuffle the way they set up at centre bounces. But around the ground, it was very even.
Yeah.
So apart from you take away centre bounces, I think it was a really even tussle.
I think that's why we hold Cameron to such high regard. Like, he's probably top 3 ruckman in the comp at the moment with Tristan Sherry as well. But the ability of Cameron to push back. He works so well in our system to push back. I think he had 4 or 5 intercept marks or something ridiculous for a ruckman. I know Gawn sort of pushes back as well, but Gawn, no one's going to beat him in the centre. That's his bread and butter. Maybe you could make an argument that Cox could have competed a little bit more, because we've talked about Cox's tap work in the centre. But when he doesn't have a running start, Gawn, it's 0-0.
Yeah.
Like, you have a good sort of advantage, or not advantage, but a good even playing field over.
Yeah, you could see that Cameron was happy to engage body, not jump.
Yes.
Centre back. And he does play a bit like that a lot of the time anyway, but he thought that maybe that's my best way. If he gets up early and gets his reach and is able to tap it wherever he likes, that's where he can get real advantage. And although they did win +9 in centre bounces, there were some times when we got some good looks and on the way out as well. You saw some of that vision with Pendlebury weaving through congestion and out the other side. Jeez, he's unbelievable, this bloke, isn't he? He had another 29 touches or something.
Yeah, 29 touches, a bunch of clearances, a bunch of defensive half pressure acts as well was really good. He was just,
he was just Pendles at his age.
That's it. Just vintage. And in a day, and I will talk about it now, in a day where Nick Dacos was tagging Ed Langdon and kept Ed Langdon to 4 touches, which is incredible. And had 19 of his own and kicked a goal.
I think back to my tagging days, and my best tagging days was when I had 19 touches and kept Brent Harvey to 14. I tagged Scott West, who's averaging 32 touches a game, and I've kept him to 19 touches, and I've had 22 myself. They're the ones that you go, yep, tick, tick, tick.
Did a good job,
Not when you have 4 touches and he still has 20 and kicks a goal. So that was, for me, that was a massive win for Collingwood, because, number one, you got a 22 possession getting all-Australian wingman, and you've kept him and you've moved him out of position and having to push someone inexperienced to the wing to cover him, which didn't quite work. And then he goes into the centre clearances, which he has no idea how to play clearance work, like obviously an Oliver or a Petrarca for that matter. Goes in, has 4 touches only for the game. So he's minus 18 on touches. So you can say whatever you like about nullifying Dacos, but we've actually nullified Langdon, who is an elite player, in his own right.
And he's their run and carry player as well, and that's what they really lack. They lack that polish and that run and carry. Why do you think they've used Oliver as a tagger or a run with player really recently when sort of Oliver came back? Wouldn't it have made more sense to have someone who works in that centre circle with a bigger body like Oliver does to outmuscle?
I was thinking this exact same thing after watching that game, and I would have preferred, and I think that still Dacos has as much value at half back or a wing or in the middle or even at half forward at times. I think they should shuffle him around, because the bigger bodied midfielders actually move him away. And if they get that, especially with Gawn, so your advantage is a 6'8" ruckman who's mobile and is a hit out ruckman, and big bodied midfielders at ground level. Wouldn't you want a Petrarca or an Oliver pushing a small Dacos who's my size and skinny or lean for that matter, and being able to manoeuvre his body and get hit, some really clear looks out of the middle? I would have thought that was what they would want. Obviously, they went with the tag, and they probably think it worked for them. But I think it was a massive advantage to Collingwood, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, and Ed Langdon over the last few years has played pretty well against us. He usually matches up when Josh Dacos was on the wing. That would be his natural opponent, and Josh Dacos goes and gets 35 and has a bloody ripping.
What a game.
You can't, like what Fly said at the end, you focus on one Dacos, you got another Dacos there.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing in the modern game. You can tag all you like. I mean, you look at, you've tagged a player who's been technically ranked outside the 100 top 100 players in the last month of footy. We know what he can do and how damaging he is. But you got to go out there and win the game. You got to go out there and win it, and hopefully you're accountable enough at the right times, and you can, as a team defense, you can nullify these type of players. But if you put too much time into one player, sometimes it can hurt you. And if you need to tag when someone starts getting off the hook, then tag them maybe later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or as some of these other coaches like Hardwick and some of these coaches said, tag him in the last quarter when you know his running game gets going. That's when you need to tag.
Because that's when he does his best work in that last quarter.
As good as Nick Dacos is, he's not overly accountable. He doesn't need to be because he's so strong offensively and he's such a powerful runner, and they're usually trying to tag him, so he doesn't have to worry about the opposition player as much. But you can get off him if you can control the ball. You can actually get some good looks through Nick Dacos going back the other way. But you need to control the ball, and Melbourne are good enough to do that with the quality players that they got through the middle and gone. Yeah,
it was an interesting how they sort of set up, but we go on, win that by a point, which is obviously a stark contrast to the Hawthorn game.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good sort of exercise in muscle memory to say that we can still win these really, really close games like we were in 23, like we were in 22.
Yeah, that's right. And we've won a massive amount of games under a goal over the last few years with Fly. I think he's, how many games that he's won under? Was it 10 that he's won under a goal?
Yeah, 10 out of like 11 or 10 out of 12.
Yeah, that's right, 10 out of 11.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great record, isn't it? What do you put it down to? Is it the steely mindset of the group? Is it the fact that, we're not scared to make mistakes because of the way that Fly presents that concept to the playing group? Because he is all about, guys, you're going to make mistakes. Everyone knows you're going to make mistakes, but it's when you go in your shell or you're cautious with your skills, or you go, oh, should I hit that? No, I better not. I better go long down the line. Yeah. That's when you lose an opportunity. But or you go, I'll go there, but I'll be cautious with my kicks because I'm worried about making a mistake, and then you turn it over anyway because you don't kick through the ball. Bang, turnover goes back the other way. If the coach is in your head, you're thinking in your subconsciously, Fly says, have a crack at your kicks. Don't worry about making mistakes, and you have a crack at it. Boom, it hits, and then everyone's just like, wow, okay, and then you create opportunities from those looks. And everyone's playing with confidence because they're not worried about making mistakes because they know they're not going to get told off by their scary coach for making mistakes like it was like in my day. But, they're certainly playing with confidence, and it'll be interesting to see how they go after the bye and that second part of the year. There's no question.
And talking about that second part of the year, we'll look back onto the first half. So sitting at 11-2, I think the percentage is about 134, 135. 2023, we're in the exact same position, 11-2, with pretty much exact same percentage as well. And we're touted to have the best offense, the best defense. Number one in defense. Yes. Some of the best offense, but also scoring
number
off turnovers.
4 in offense at the moment.
There you go, number 4 in offense, but scoring over turnovers. We're number one, and
that's right.
Who was saying it? Someone on 360 or someone was saying that the only teams to have been 1-1 at this stage of the year was the 2007 Cats, 2009 Cats, and we know what happened in both of those grand finals, and they're some of the teams of
it's a telling stat, isn't it? So number one in scores from turnovers, and number one in defending opposition or our own turnovers. So it's pretty telling, stat. And I went back and had a look, and I thought I'll have a look at the Sydney last year because I know they sort of petered out, and obviously we know what happened in the grand final last year against Brisbane. But in 2025, obviously last year, in round 14 at the same time last year, Sydney were number one in offence and number one in defence. Wow. But by the end of the year, they were still number one in offence, but 7th in defence. And they'd lost 5 of their last 10 going into the finals. So it can drop away really quickly if you don't quite get it right. Albeit we've got some serious depth at the moment, and we've been able to cover for it, and they had no injuries to date, and they got a couple, and all of a sudden it shook things up a little bit. So But yeah, right now we're, like you said, we're number 4 in defence, which is interesting because we've got scope for improvement there. Number 1 in defence, number 4 in offence. So, but the key for that for me is number 1 in defence and trying to keep the opposition scores to as low as possible, because you get in, as you know, like it's one thing when you look at the end of the year with Sydney last year, they were 7th in defence, still number 1 in offence. I think, we're still kicking a score. We'll be right. We'll be right. But you get put in a couple of big finals, and if you're playing 3 finals, you got to win at least 3, maybe 4 to win a grand final. There's going to be one of those games where you get tested defensive, and your defence has to hold up. Yeah. All right? It's a different sort of heat. You've got to hit bodies. You've got to be able to hit bodies hard. Second and third efforts, get up and run again, and then hit targets when your legs are cooked.
Yes.
And still be able to kick a score and still defend really well. So if you get hit between the eyes by a good side in finals and you've got to defend really well and your defence hasn't held up for the majority of the year, there's no way you're going to get through 3 or 4 big finals. So,
and I think that's what's good about the Pies at the moment. I read something actually this morning where obviously number 1 defence, but we've conceded on average less than, I think it's about 67 points a game, which is just wild to think. And we've played some, you got to think that at the start of the year, we had one of the hardest fixtures. We've played every single top 8 team from last year pretty much. Yeah. 2 grand finalists back to back. Yeah. We had that really poor opening round. Yeah. We're I don't think anyone would have had us, not 11-2 obviously, but top of the ladder or top 4 to start the season.
Kane Cornsby eating his words at the moment. He's tempted us to miss the 8. Sometimes when you have these outlandish statements, it's all good for PR at the time, but you got to think about what you're saying. Like anyone with half a brain would have known that we've won a flag. The year before that, we should have won the prelim and gone through and probably would have smashed Geelong that year, no doubt. And it was just like obviously through circumstances and injuries and a bit of lack of depth.
Didn't help
last year. Just didn't help last year. And like we talked about before, having those 3 pre-seasons in a row or 2 in a row where you're really having shortened pre-seasons and injuries, you're chasing your tail for a lot of the year if you can't get it right early in the year. So. But they were coming hard last year, even so you can consider if you talk about the second half of last year and the previous 2 years, you got a Collingwood that is, potentially if you get a few things right, there could have been 2 flags in those last 3 years, and then Kane Corns is predicting them to miss the 8, and you just go, mate, you're a twit. You're a twit.
He loves a click. He loves a click.
Clickbaiter. Yeah, let's move on from that. What else we got, mate?
So we'll talk about the halfway through. We've got highlighted here, one of the improvement areas is our clearances. So we've been losing clearances mainly in the centre, so getting first hand. And I know it's sort of counterproductive because we are losing clearances, losing some inside 50s, but we're still winning games, right? Yeah. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But do you think someone like a Tom Mitchell is needed in that middle?
I think it'd be worth, when you're winning and winning well, it'd be worth giving him a block of games just to see how he goes, even off the bench, even off a sub, and just have a look. He might be handy coming off as a sub into the middle in the second half of games and just seeing how that looks. But definitely needs a bit of a tweak. Like I was talking to you before, I think we engage body sometimes a little bit too early. I think the opposition are trying to engage body because we know we're not a real strong, other than Ned Long. We probably don't have a big-bodied midfield team with Dacos in there especially. But we were good at reacting to the ball dropping and read it off the hands. We're pretty good at that. But yeah, I'd like to see stand off our man and hit bodies late, or stand off and wait till the ball drops before we engage body and put pressure on the opposition, and then try and manoeuvre. I'll push the opposition players into the ruck contest and see if we can get the ball on the outside. Right, that was one thing I'd be looking to do, and it's hard to do because players are so good at using their body and positioning themselves now. And you need strong bodies to be able to do it. But I reckon the centre-bound stuff definitely needs a bit of a tweak, maybe a change-up in positioning, maybe even a change-up in the balance of Darcy Cameron. I know he knows what he's doing better than me. He's better ruckman than I ever was, obviously. But I know he likes to not jump. I'd like to see him jump a little bit and just jump early as well,
Okay.
and they just mix things up a little bit, because when you come up against the giants with the long levers, as soon as you engage body and not jump, it's just too easy for them to do this. So that might be something to look at. And definitely, I'd be definitely looking to give Tom Mitchell a block of games.
Yeah, 100%. And he's doing well in the VFL. We talked about his aura sort of needing to come back, and it's starting to come back in patches. And I think, the St Kilda and West Coast game back to back is probably a good opportunity for him to sort of stake his claim, and to see, not to say, oh, these are going to be easy wins, but to see what Tom Mitchell and a Ned Long midfield looks like. And, like we have... Like, we've got some players here that we're talking about. Obviously, Tom Mitchell is one of them. But you got to think that we also got Jordan to go in the back half of the season that's ready to go.
Yeah.
Or hopefully be ready to go.
Well, that's right. No, like we keep saying with him, let's just wait till he's absolutely cherry ripe. Let's give him a couple in the twos to get him really going, and then bring him in when he's cherry ripe. Because imagine that'd be something you can add in, because you got to look a little bit different going into finals. So you'd like a sitting duck when you're playing well and everyone's looking at you, and you're coming into finals, everyone's starting to work out. And like they did to Sydney last year, they've not only worked out, they got a couple of niggles, they lost a bit of confidence, but the opposition worked out how they were playing. Yeah. And they're slowly working us out as well. Like a lot of teams are going to watch to see what Melbourne did to us and what they can do. And can they simulate something that Melbourne, how they played against us? So sides are going to try things, and they'll see things that are working, and they'll use it to the best of their ability. So we need to look a little bit different going into finals, no question about that. And that might be the injection of a De Goey. It might mean that you come up against a gun ruckman and you might have to use a Cox or someone like that just to get the ascendancy, because Darcy Cameron's been holding up the load
he really
on his own, pretty much 90% game time. Yeah. Without McStay being there, I know Cox has come in for a couple of games as well, but he's going to be. We don't want to burn him out.
Cooked. Yeah.
I know he's an elite runner and all the rest of it, and he's doing a great job, but he's going to be welcoming this bye more than most.
100%. And we've seen, like I said, we've seen what he can do. Probably in all Australian form as well, top 3 in the Copeland, but sometimes he does need that chop out. And McStay coming back is huge. We know what the 3-pronged head of Membry, McStay, and Mychek sort of looks like. It will take, a little bit more getting used to. We saw it on the weekend that it wasn't nearly as good as it was at the start of the season. But again, that's McStay's first game in 8 weeks or something. So they'll sort of work into it.
Yeah, and I'd start to look at as well, like the performance, the real consistent performance of certain players. Because if someone starts to drop off for 2 or 3 weeks and we're still winning, do you leave them in because they're getting the job done, or do you look at someone else fresher and a better look? Because the problem is you get to finals, close to finals, if someone's been out of form for a month and you're still playing that player, and all of a sudden he shits the bed, so to speak, during the final series and costs you, you don't want that. You want these guys coming in cherry ripe. So if anyone's out of form at all for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I reckon we just get them out, get the next guy in, and keep everyone on their toes. And that might improve that player to go back, find some form, get in the right mindset again, and bring him back in. Yeah,
and that's what we saw a lot in 2023 when we did have that sort of depth coming through. No real injuries, people playing well in the VFL, and we saw John Noble at the end of 2023 before that first final against Melbourne get dropped because his form leading in wasn't as good as a Markov, and we went with like a Lipinski and whoever else we sort of brought in instead, and that's, I feel like that's something that's going to happen.
Is there anyone on the side at the moment you think's in that in that area might need to have a couple of games in the twos potentially?
I think probably the only guys from the weekend's game would be, I think Sullivan had a full game. I thought he could improve a little bit. Ed Allen was subbed off for.
There's a couple of moments with Sullivan. I like Sullivan. I think he's a good role player. There's a couple of moments where I think he was a little bit slow to get the ball away. And because of he's only small, he got smothered in a couple of tackles. And I just thought, a De Goey would have been able to shake the hips, break away.
Exactly.
And then give the hands out. So, it'd be stiff, but, he might be one that you could play around with, definitely.
It's sort of like an Ed Allen, but like guys like Membry, who wasn't really supposed to play a full season, has been absolutely incredible in the forward line. Not kicking 3 or 4 goals a game, but what he's been able to do to this forward line structure and to help my check off. Yeah, it's exactly right.
So he was one of probably 4 to 6 weeks ago. I thought, he's not doing a lot, but he's playing his role.
Yeah.
But then he's jumped up, kicked 3 the other week, and played well again in a tough game on Monday. So, but there's no real sort of loose links there at the moment, is there?
Exactly
and occasionally someone has a stinker, but someone else jumps up and covers their ass. So it's working quite well. What about young Will Hayes? How do you think he's tracking at the moment? Yeah,
I thought I thought he did okay on the weekend. I thought he was maybe a little bit out of his depth. Some of those, I love that they were using him a lot, which was really good. They have trust in him, which is nice. Couple of drop marks, couple of slower decisions, like moving the ball. But it's only his second game. Like, what can you say? Like, it's good that he had a run in a big game like that, not against he played against North Melbourne, but a big game, and he knows what the MCG is like now. Kicks a debut goal. Kicks a goal, his first goal, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
but
it's great to see.
he's probably one that comes out and someone
probably just got to work on the physique a little bit, and he had 0 tackles, but he did a couple of good things, I thought, and definitely a player for the future. I think come finals time they'll be looking for some stronger bodies in that area. But just really bright future as well, hasn't he?
No, he does. Yeah.
Ned Long, mate,
my boy.
Yeah.
I love Longy. I don't think he had any clearances on the weekend, but it's not even just that. He's doing his role really well, and we've talked about this a lot, where last year we didn't have, obviously, Mitchell, and Ned Long only played a handful of games last year, but we didn't have that big body type protecting Nick Dacos, protecting Scott Pendlebury, and now we have that. And you can just see that, okay, we're still losing clearances in the centre, but what he's able to do just defensively for us and protecting these smaller players and letting Nick, run the ball or whoever it may be. I think he's really just been a godsend, and he's only 22. Like, that's the biggest thing. He's so young.
He's had 16 touches in the first half. Yeah. Really helped us set it up. 7 tackles again. So, mate, he's been just a phenomenon, hasn't he, really, coming into the side? I mean, he's just is a player we've found from nothing and didn't have to give up anything for him. That's and they're the best stories as well. You can talk about all these trades and this and how you can shape your team, but if you can find 1 or 2 of these guys out of the wilderness and bring them into strong culture, and there's a lot to be said about the strength of our culture. And the education that, talk about experienced players. Sometimes when you burn these experienced players too quickly, and they used to do it in my day, if you weren't getting a kick at 28, 29, they'd just get rid of you after one bad year. But sometimes you just have an off year. It's not because you're getting older. Now they're sort of persisting with these players, and Collingwood have persisted with them. They're added to their depth and been able to bring some young guys in. And these older, more experienced players are actually educating them on the run quite quickly, as well as the development program with Josh Fraser and the like have got these kids going really quite quickly. Next thing you know, your depth is just, there's plenty of it.
Yeah, and I think that was a glass half full of last year where we had all those injuries. We could see, we got games into Sullivan, Long, Ed Allen, Will Parker played a few, Charlie Dean as well. Our depth, especially in the VFL, is pretty good, and the VFL team are going pretty well. Beside, they've lost a couple of games here and there, but they're going pretty well. Yes. For the first half of the season, 11 wins. What's been your favourite win?
Oh, my favourite win, jeez.
There's been a couple. There's been a few good ones.
Look, I did enjoy the weekend, I must say. I did enjoy the weekend. I was a bit filthy on the loss against the Cats. Yeah, because I felt like we got robbed in that one.
Well, we were up by 4 goals.
But you know what? I think the Gabba win up there, that's a big win up there on their home and we've really struggled up there. Just with the size of the ground, you've got to be strong at centre bounces. You've got to be strong at contest. We do like to play, and we are pretty sound in those areas, but our outside run and our uncontested ball game and maintaining possession and running, bubbling up and getting ball out the back to the Bobby Hills of the world and the Jamie Elliott's is kind of our forte, and it's hard to do at the Gabba. But that was a big win, and that was just like a real confidence booster for everyone at the footy club.
Yeah, no, it was a. Yeah, I know. I just like beating Brisbane as
Yeah.
well. But I think my favourite win probably was that round. I guess I was going to say round 2, but it's really a round 1 game against Port Adelaide, where I like that win not because we beat them by 90 so points, but I think it was because after we got smashed in against the Giants and everyone wrote us off and like, oh look, we're right, we're 1 week in and we're right about Collingwood being too old. We come out to a team that didn't they finish second or something last year as well, Port Adelaide, and we go up and smash them by 90 points, and like, hang on a second, we're actually doing okay. Then we go on, I think we win 6, lose the Geelong game, and then we've got 5 in a row now. It's just, the season can change just on a dime.
It can change, and that's why you got to stay on your toes as well, generally speaking, because as soon as you get, like, if one of our best players goes down, or 2 of your best goes down, all of a sudden you lose a game by a point that you should win, and everyone just loses a bit of confidence, and then you got to play the second best team the week after away from home, and then you lose by a short margin, then you get a couple more injuries. Next thing you know, shit, we're up against it here, and things can change very quickly. So you got to take advantage of this winning these winning moments and continue on and not take them for granted and really enjoy the process as well, and don't skimp on your preparation and your recovery, and you've just got to keep doing everything right and make sure that you keep ticking all the boxes, and I'm sure they will. They've got a very experienced group and they all want the same thing. There's no question about that.
100%. Look, we'll before we head off, I've got a bunch of questions. I'll ask some of the ones that sort of stood out to me. Courtney Lucy asks, how to deal with haters saying the Pies will drop off soon? So people saying that we can't keep this up, this play and this gameplay on for the rest of the year. We're peaking too early. What do you sort of say to that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you can peak too early. There's no question you can peak too early, but you got to consider a couple of things. We've been managing our group so well. You got to think about this. We've taken Sidebottom out. We've rested Maynard for a few weeks now. There's 4 players or 5 players a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago that came out of our best 18
against Fremantle.
And we're still able to win that game, which was a huge win, really, considering Fremantle were backs against the wall when they're one of the best defensive teams in the league, regardless of where they sit on the ladder. So that was a big win. If they keep managing the group the way that they are, and the buys come at a good time. They probably don't have to manage things too much for the next couple of weeks, but they might have to do the same thing again in 3, 4, 5 weeks' time, where they just pick the right 1 or 2 players, bring them in, bring them out. I think that'll hold them in good stead, because the one thing is you need players in the right mindset. It is tough. I remember my first year ever tagging in 2003, and I was coming up against guys like obviously Shane Crawford and the Chris Judds of the world and these guys, and Brent Harvey's, and you get a new challenge each week, and by round 15 I'm going, man, I'm mentally cooked because, and then and then Mick Malthouse goes, oh, let's have a week where you can just run around and do your own thing. And that was refreshing.
Oh, right, okay.
But at that moment, I'm thinking, geez, I'd need a week off. If I get a week off here, I'll be frothing the next week. And that's what's happening at the moment. You get a week off here, come back the next week, you're frothing. You don't want to lose your spot in the team and say you're fresh and you've got to perform. So it has a really strong impact on the group. I think if they can keep doing that through to the end, there's going to be no drop off. It's going to take a few injuries and something drastic to happen to drop off now, I think.
That's a good answer. And there's a lot of people that ask about the drop. Everyone's scared of the drop off. I've got another one just before we go. Caleb _ Barras says, "G'day, gents. Love your work." Thank you, Caleb. Thoughts on Degoe potentially being a sub come finals, so as an impact player?
Potentially. If he's not quite, if he's fit, but he's not super match fit, maybe that is where they go with it. Mate, well, what a weapon to be able to use off the bench. I actually like that thought. I mean, obviously, if he's at his best and you get him to somewhere near 100% fit, you're not going to be using him off the bench. You want him, cracking in the first quarter and impacting the game from the get-go. But if we get him to that stage where he's not far off, but he's not quite there, then maybe that's the way they need to play it. But I dare say either way, we need to find a way to get him into full fitness so we can play in 4 quarters.
Yeah, and I think they've got him about 4 weeks away. So at the start of, for this second half, we've still got Maynard to come in, DeGoey to come in, Schultz to come in, Lipinski to come in.
Yeah.
Like there is, and there's probably a couple others that I'm forgetting about, but there is, premiership players there.
Would you have Lipinski in your best 22?
Yeah.
You would have him?
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have until I saw a stat that he is our best kick going inside 50 that leads to a goal. Better than anyone we've got going forward. And the run that he provides, that box-to-box sort of midfielder, if you want to sort of call him that, on the wing, probably comes in for Will Hayes, really.
Yeah.
Because Will Hayes was sort of playing that sort of high half forward role. We'll keep this as a time capsule, this question now. Where do you see us round, whatever it is, 24, 25, whatever the round is called now, wins and losses from here?
Oh, yeah. Geez, I haven't looked at the fixture really, really closely, but you'd probably say there's a couple of losses in there somewhere, regardless of how well you play. Because the game is, if you're off 5% and the opposition are on, and you leak a little bit defensively in the modern game, you're going to get beat. So there's going to be some challenges. I'd say, we could probably, how many games? 10 games left, is there? 9 games? 10 games?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, let's say there's 2 losses out of that games left, approximately. I hope I'm right. If that's right, we finish top, and then we sail in, play 4th in the first final.
Yeah, and that'll be the biggest thing. Yeah, I had us down for, I don't know what losses, but I had us down for 2 losses as well, and staying on top of the ladder. Home final, you play whoever's 4th, which is probably looking like it might be a Geelong or a Gold Coast. Wouldn't mind the Gold Coast at the MCG.
That's right. Would be good, wouldn't it? Would be good. I'd love to beat Geelong. That would be the best. But I did say they only lose 3 or 4 games for the year at the start of the year to a few of my mates, and they were laughing at me. And I was probably a little bit biased, a little bit, just hopeful, but. It's come to fruition, or could come to fruition, I should say. And
it's just been, it's been an incredible first half to the season, and we've just got gears to go into. Like, that's the scary thing. Like, I personally don't even think that we've peaked yet. I think that we've got just gears to go up to. We're very much molding into whoever we sort of play. Like, Demons didn't like an uncontested game. We've given them an uncontested game, kept the ball off them. So I'm very excited to see what this next batch of 3 games sort of looks like. So it's St Kilda, who are trying to get into the 8, West Coast, who are West Coast, and then it's Carlton. So if we can pinch all of those, not pinch, but we can smash them all in those 3 games.
Yeah, and they're all important games, as you know. And you lose one of those games you shouldn't win. All of a sudden, everyone's going, some question marks. But I love the way that Fly attacks and presents to the group in any given weekend, because every single game creates a new challenge, no matter who you're playing. He's always presented that to the group. So St Kilda, it can beat anyone on their day, and that's the way it is. So you've got to be on your game, and you've got to understand the way they play and how to. I think we are very flexible in the way we play, based on the team that you're coming up against, and we've been able to change the way we play to suit. Yes, the trademarks in our game and the run and gun play and scores from turnover and all the rest of it, they're still there. They're always visible, those signs of the way we play, but we can adjust according to the opposition team, which, if you ignore that, and I think that's where, Geelong are a little bit different. They've got plan A, and their plan A is just very good. Yeah. Whereas I reckon we can go to B and C.
Which is what we've been seeing, which is fantastic.
And you need that in a big final against a good team, because you just play the way that you want to play, and it doesn't suit the opposition. You can get done over in a big final, and it can cost you potentially a grand final.
Bloody hell. Talking about grand finals is absolutely tantalising. But look, we'll leave it there. Is that been our mid-season review? We'll be back on Wednesday next week to discuss the St Kilda game and what's happening there. Dutchy, thank you so much, mate.
See you later, Swoopy.
Done.
Thanks, mate.
See you guys.
Beautiful.
Perfecto.
Good job. Good. Well done.